Welcome everyone to the Learning Cycle module on game-based teaching approach for the month of October, being presented under the Shikshana Samrama program 2025-26 in collaboration with Diet Ramanagara and Caring with Color. Now, let's try and understand the goals of Shikshana Samrama for this year. As always, our ambition and effort is to create and enhance the English environment in each of our classrooms. How do we intend to do this? Is by having certain teacher-specific goals and outcomes and learner-specific goals and outcomes planned through our modules. Thus, our school-level outcomes are eventually achieved. At the teacher level outcomes, we would like for all of our teacher participants to adapt to the experiential teaching methods and try and understand the deepened and varied pedagogical strategies to teach grammar, values, and language skills. This will in turn help our students improve their confidence in using English and also create an environment where they have deepened opportunities to enhance their language skills. The objectives of each of our module is quite simple. We will try and understand the ease and effectiveness of teaching English experientially. We will also look at the curated resources that were meticulously created for you and how these can be taken into our classroom. We will also end up discussing strategies to address LSRW and, of course, thinking. This year, we also intend to address grade-specific learning outcomes along with low achieved learning outcomes from NAS, especially by focusing on the FLN skills of our learners. The outcomes of the module, again, are the results of all of those objectives. We will try and achieve each of these, which is to increase participation and engagement in the classrooms, which is to try and use all the experiential resources in the classroom and implement them with a few modifications of your own. Here's a quick sneak peek into the monthly resources available for this month. In Teachopia, you will find files under the name Karyagara 3. Here, QR codes for supporting documents of the October month's resources are provided for you grade-wise. Here, we have grade 4 resources displayed for you as an example. We also have grade 5, grade 6, and grade 7, all of which have been mapped to your academic calendar. Let us now jump into the theme of the day. The theme of the day is an approach, a language teaching approach called game-based teaching. What is this approach? This is an approach that helps learners understand and learn a language using games. Here, the integration of games is fun-filled, yet purposeful, and thus purposeful learning happens with game elements. Do not worry, all of these have been mapped to your curriculum and aligned. Let's try and understand how all of this helps facilitate learning in the classrooms. Why do we need to use game-based teaching? This is an important question that we need to understand for ourselves. It is simply because it increases engagement and motivation in our classrooms. Learners also understand the need to win and compete and thus are open to immediate feedback and self-correction because this means they get to win the game. Additionally, development of 21st century skills like problem solving and critical thinking also happens. Because in order to move to the next level of the game, learners need to understand the problem themselves and come up with solutions. In this case, it will be with regard to language skills. Last but not the least, game-based teaching approach creates a low-stress environment. Here, the children are not pressured under any circumstance, and thus reinforcement is effective. A couple of strategies that we will be using under this approach are divided into three segments, which are engagement and exploratory level strategies, expressive and demonstrative strategies, and structural and organizational strategies. Each of these have keywords that we can use to understand how they work. Let's try and understand what we mean by these strategies. By giving you an example, here is engagement and exploratory level strategies. Here, the focus is on observation, imagination, and inquiry, which means the learners are asked to observe themselves, which is engagement, imagine within their minds, which is both engagement and exploratory, and inquiry, which is exploratory in itself, which means that giving our learners a wider horizon to understand the world around them using English can be done by simply using these strategies. Observe level strategies help our learners focus on their sensory perception. They can simply look, listen, feel, and pay attention and express what they have seen or experienced. Imagine level strategies encourages creative thought and of course abstract thinking. Here, the kind of strategies that can be used are create mentally, dream, pretend, invent, all of which help the learners come up with something creative by themselves with no right or wrong answers. Ask level strategies promotes curiosity and information gathering. These use strategies like probing, investigating, and wondering, wherein a challenge or question is posed and the learners are asked to go out and find the answer for themselves. This is how the children explore the language for each of their own groups and each of their own games. Next, we have expressive and demonstrative strategies. Here, the focus is on output and application, unlike the previous strategies. The previous strategies focused on what the children can absorb. Here, the learners will focus on what they can give. Namely, three such variety strategies are name, describe, and act. Under name, we are asked to focus on vocabulary, identification, and labeling. This can be used to pinpoint or give a title or define and identify things. But we don't stop here. We not only give them words to identify or nouns to put a name to a thing, but we also ask them to go ahead and describe them. We encourage them to give detailed verbal and written articulation of their observations by asking them to explain, elaborate, and illustrate. This can be in the form of words or pictures. Next, we have something called ACT. ACT is a demonstrative strategy where the learners are asked to focus on their kinesthetic learning. Physical expression or role plays or performances or mimicking helps the learners learn something new within the language without the pressure of being right, but yet producing the language. Last but not the least, we have structural and organizational strategies. These strategies focus on frameworks for narrative or process, meaning the beginning, middle, and end of a narrative is something the learners are asked to identify, plan, and sequence. Strategies like sequence, organize chronologically, and develop a plot where the learners are asked to come up with a story or take a portion of a story and imagine what could have happened before it and after it is something that the learners will have their curiosity sparked with. Now that we've understood the strategies that we can undertake within this approach, why use an approach at all? Aren't there different approaches like game based teaching and storytelling methodology? Of course, there are. But a certain particular approach, like that of game based, has specific directions that can be taken to travel on this road. These are the strategies that we've proposed. Not only this, we have something called techniques. Here, the techniques are things that learners and teachers inevitably do under these strategies. They have different roles, yet are in sync for the same learning cycle. While learners are asked to problem solve and recall and communicate and collaborate, teachers, on the other hand, are asked for facilitation and not teaching. They're asked for strategic help and scaffolding and not direct monitoring. While there is a little bit of monitoring, targeted feedback and reinforcement is how monitoring is done and not by supervising each of their steps. Having understood this, let's try and get the characteristics of game-based teaching approach clear in our minds. The goal and rules of a game-based teaching is always aligned to the learning outcomes. They are gamified for sure, but they are always aligned to the curriculum. Next, we have experiential learning with simulation and hands-on activities. Here, the learners are asked to do and think for themselves and their group in order to reach different levels of the game. Last but not the least, evaluation and feedback is given in order for the learners to win and enjoy the game better. As such, here are 6 activity ideas that we will be covering in this particular module, which are word hunt, sorting race, spin and say, bingo, memory match, and I spy. You may notice how each of these have a learning outcome in themselves, which is dealt with a specific or combination of strategies. Let's try and see how these ideas that are mapped to specific learning outcomes works out for different grades. We have specific activities for grades 4 and 5 mapped to their learning outcomes, along with grade 6 and 7, which are also mapped to their learning outcomes.
Word hunt. The activity word hunt involves finding blends in text. The prominent teaching strategy is look and name. The learning outcomes are reads small text, posters, charts in English with comprehension, responds to simple instructions announcements in English made in class or in school. Responds verbally in writing to questions based on day to day life experiences. Writes a few words or short sentence in response to poems and stories or using picture clues. The learning objectives state that learners will be able to identify blends in text they see around them. The materials required for this activity are blend lists. These are lists of words that have consonant blends like R blend, L blend, or S blend, and vowel diagrams too. This is a sample of a poem that you could distribute to the students. The steps for this activity are you need to provide the students with texts, and they can be from newspapers, books, magazines, or any other source. Then assign the students with one blend each. Instruct the students to mark the words that have the blend they have been assigned in the text given. Recognize the student who has finishes first as the winner.
Sorting race. Here, the strategy deployed is name and observe. The learning outcomes are that the learners are able to read text in posters and comprehend them if they are in English, and also respond to simple instructions. The simple learning objective that we would like to achieve is for them to identify blends, whether in words or in images. Here, the materials required for this game are quite simple. Take 3 baskets and label them with particular blends. And then hand the learners a list of words or word cards or picture cards that they need to sort and put it under the respective blend baskets. Here is a list of words that can be used for your word cards and picture cards, where on one side you can have the word and on the other side you could have the picture. But do not put the blend on the picture card. Let it be as a label on the basket alone. So here are L blends, R blends, R blends again, S blends, and vowel blends. R control blends are also used. The procedure and steps to conduct this activity or facilitate this in your classrooms are quite simple. Choose a spot where you can keep the baskets. Name each of them with different blends. Rotate with different blends each day so the learners are exposed to different blend words. Next, you do need to prepare a stack of word or picture cards. You could always use the example words that we've provided. Then, ask the students to individually or in teams race to sort the cards. Learners who do it as quick as possible will then be rewarded. Declare that the individual or the team as a winner who categorizes the cards correctly and on time. A quick timer of 10 to 15 seconds should be good enough.
The next activity is spin and say. Spin and say is an activity designed for grade 4. The learning outcomes are response to simple instructions, announcements in English made in class or school. Writes few words, short sentences in response to poems and stories using picture clues. The learning objectives state that learners will be able to give words that have blends. Materials required. This activity requires you to create a spinner, and the spinner needs to list as many blends as possible and have a movable arrow in the middle. So how is this played? This is played once the spinner is built, you invite the students to spin the arrow. Now the arrow will stop at a particular blend. So the student needs to say a word that starts with the blend which the arrow points out to. The winner is the one who gets the highest number of words.
Now to the next activity called Blend Bingo. The strategy here used is to observe, name, and act. The learning outcome is that the learners act according to the instructions given. There are very specific instructions that they are required to follow in this game. Here again, the learning objective for a grade 5 learner is to identify blends via pictures or words. A simple bingo sheet wherein a grid of 3 into 3 is created on paper. Write words with blends in each box. Create many such grids on separate pieces of paper and ensure that the sheets are separate and unique. Next, bingo cards are also to be created. Use the words in order for it to be put into the bingo sheets. Remember that they can be smaller. The bingo game is to distribute the bingo sheets with the grid and ask them to pick a chit and call out the word in it. This can be done by one of a volunteer student who can come near you and your teacher table and do the same. The other students in the classroom who have the word on their sheet will mark it. The students who marks off all the words on the bingo sheet is the winner. The student calls out bingo when all the words are marked. How do we do this? Step 1 is to create bingo cards with pictures or words containing various blends. Examples like frog, plane, clap can be used. Step 2, the teacher calls out a blend sound. Here, it can either be you who's calling or a student volunteer who picks out the chit. The blend word can be called out or describe the picture to bring in variety. The students who mark their cards using your callouts will then eventually finish a couple of words. Not everyone has the same one, and thus only a few learners will end up shouting the winning words bingo.
The next activity, which is designed for grade 6, is called Memory Match. The strategy used is name and observe. The learning outcome is that you can respond to announcements and instructions made in class, school assembly, and railway station and in any other public place. The learning objective is that learners will be able to match pairs by identifying words with blends. The materials required are card pairs. So you need to create a card, one with a blend and the other with a picture of the object which has a blend. You can look at these samples for an idea. How to play the game? We need to create pairs of cards, one with a word containing a blend and another with its corresponding picture. Alternatively, one card could have the blend and the other a word that starts with it. Lay all cards face down, and the players will take turns flipping two cards to find a match, and when they do, they will say the word aloud.
The last activity for this module is called I Spy. I Spy is one of a very interesting activity that uses the strategy of observe and ask and describe and name. Here, the learning outcome that focuses on critical thinking based on characters or ideas within the textbook and outside is focused. Learners are also asked to identify objects within their immediate environment, be it in the classroom, in the school premises, or at home, and pick ones that have specific blends. Procedure to conduct I Spy in your classrooms is quite simple. All you need to do is have a good visual of your entire classroom, be mindful of the objects around, and go ahead and call something that you have seen. But don't tell it directly to the learners. Tell it by saying, I spy with my little eye something that starts with st. And then the students are required to look around and guess the object that starts with that particular blend. This way, they get to have fun looking around and also understanding blends while enriching their own vocabulary. We hope you all have fun facilitating these activities in your classrooms, and we hope your learners like them. Thank you and have a wonderful learning experience.